The city had that kind of afternoon sunlight that felt sharper than it looked. Bright, almost cruel in its clarity. Victoria Hayes adjusted her designer coat, the kind stitched with precision and embroidered with status, and stepped out of her black Tesla. The heels of her boots clicked against the polished sidewalk. She had 15 minutes before the meeting that could make or break her latest fashion line launch. 15 minutes that mattered more than anything in her meticulously curated life. In the chaos of rushing, in the whirlwind of schedules and expectations, her wallet slipped silently from her clutch, landing on the concrete with a muted thud that no one noticed, except for two boys across the street. Ethan, 14, tall for his age but still thin and scrawny, bent over instinctively. He caught the thick leather wallet in his hands. His younger brother Noah, 9, smaller, wiry, with dirt permanently etched under his fingernails, crouched beside him. Their eyes flicked back toward the polished glass towers and the luxurious crowd moving past. "That's a millionaire's wallet," Ethan muttered. His voice carried awe, but also calculation. Noah's hands lingered on the worn strap of his backpack, the corners frayed and patched with tape. "She won't even notice," he said, not questioning the temptation but voicing the reality. Ethan shook his head. "Noah, He stopped, his eyes scanning the wallet. "It's a lot of money. Look at this, cash, platinum cards, IDs, Park Avenue. Nobody poor lives there." Noah tilted his head, the kind of child's head tilt that made adults pause. "But what if she's scared too?" The words landed heavier than the wallet itself. Ethan froze. He had expected questions about toys, chocolate, video games, something small, something immediate. He had not expected that. The moral fork presented itself clearly. Do they take it and survive, or return it and risk nothing but disappointment? By the time the sun dipped lower, the boys were back in their one-room apartment, a space so small the walls seemed to close in when the heat of the day pressed down. The building smelled of wet concrete, old paint, and something faintly sweet from the street vendors below. Their mother, Maria, lay in the single bed they shared, pale and coughing softly. Chronic illness had been her companion for years. Bills were stacked in a teetering pile on the wobbly table. One light bulb hung overhead, flickering. The fridge contained mustard and a few wilted vegetables. Hope in the apartment was measured in coins, the few they could collect from running errands for neighbors or delivering flowers to commuters. Ethan turned the wallet over in his hands. The crisp cash stared back, almost mocking him. He thought about overdue bills, the electricity that would be cut in 3 days if he didn't pay, the holes in Noah's shoes. He thought about their mother's medicine, the costs they simply could not afford. Noah peeked from behind his sketchbook. "We could keep it, right? Just a little?" Ethan shook his head slowly, the weight of conscience pressing down. Mom says money from lies burns holes in your hands. He looked at the cash again. But she's never had to watch us starve. The room fell silent. Dust motes floated lazily in the slanted light from the cracked window. The brothers sat cross-legged, facing a moral crossroads neither had ever studied in books or school. It was life itself, brutal, unfiltered, and immediate. Finally, Ethan exhaled. "We're taking it back," Noah blinked, uncertain. "But we don't even have bus fare." Ethan lifted their small jar of coins, the one they had painstakingly saved for field trips and small treats. "We'll take the bus," he said simply. Determination had hardened in his voice. The choice had been made. Integrity would cost them something, but not everything. The corporate lobby on Park Avenue gleamed like something from the future. Polished marble reflected the late afternoon sun, bouncing shards of light across a space where wealth was not a detail. It was a religion. Security guards eyed them warily. Dirty clothes, dusty sneakers, unkempt hair. They looked like children who didn't belong, and in every sense, they didn't. "Business card," one guard demanded. Ethan handed over the wallet and the single gold-embossed business card without hesitation. He didn't flinch. Every second felt like standing on a cliff. 10 minutes later, they were ushered into a glass-walled office with a skyline view that could make anyone forget the city streets below. Victoria Hayes turned from her desk, tall, elegant, mid-30s, her presence calm but commanding. She looked at them, confused. You found my wallet? Her voice was cool, polite, but devoid of judgment. Ethan nodded. Yes, ma'am. And nothing is missing? No, ma'am, Noah chimed softly. Victoria studied them, her gaze lingering on their calloused hands, their worn clothing. She didn't smile. She didn't scoff. She simply said, "Why did you bring it back?" Ethan hesitated. He wanted to answer with practicality, with the logic of a street-taught child. But it was Noah who answered first, because it wasn't ours. For a moment, Victoria's posture softened imperceptibly. Something folded inward, a memory, a recognition of something she had long buried. She motioned toward the couch. Sit down, please. The couch swallowed them. Ethan marveled at the softness, the texture, the warmth. Noah clutched his sketchbook closer, still wary. This is the first turning point. Integrity meets wealth. But reward remains uncertain. Victoria poured them warm sandwiches, real, not the kind from dollar store deals. Melted cheese, thick slices of meat, bread that smelled like care. Noah's eyes lit up. Ethan tried to hide the tremor in his hands as he ate, a combination of hunger and awe. Victoria watched silently, studying them in a way she hadn't studied anyone in years. There was no pity, no charity, just observation, curiosity, and something dangerously close to admiration. Is there anything you want? She asked. Ethan thought about rewards, cash, toys, then looked at Noah, who smiled faintly, holding his sketchbook. Can Lily have her own sandwich next time? Ethan finally said, honesty tripping over pride. Victoria chuckled, but the laugh faded quickly. She realized something profoundly wrong in her world. She had everything she could ever buy, yet these two children, with nothing, held more honesty, more resilience, more courage than anyone she knew. Victoria Hayes leaned back in her sleek chair, staring out at the skyline, yet her mind was tethered to the small figures of Ethan and Noah. Their wide eyes, their honesty. She had seen countless people in her world, opportunists, dreamers, desperate hands reaching for a taste of luxury. But these two children, they were different. There was no calculation in their return. No angle, only courage. And something deeper, something she couldn't yet name. Her office, a palace of glass, chrome, and precision, suddenly felt hollow. She had spent years climbing, building her brand, controlling every detail, every stitch, every meeting, every transaction. And yet, in one small act of honesty, two boys from the Bronx had cut through the armor she didn't know she'd built. Victoria didn't know what compelled her, but she asked them to stay a few moments longer. She wanted to understand them, not just observe. The boys exchanged wary glances, not used to attention from someone like her without a price attached. Tell me about your day, she said, trying to keep her voice neutral, professional. But the words came out softer than intended. Ethan shrugged. Library, school, helping mom. Noah fiddled with a corner of his shirt. And sometimes, the street, Victoria's brows knit. The street, he nodded. Jobs, errands, small stuff to make coins. Mom. She's sick, a pang hit Victoria in her chest, sharp and unfamiliar. She had a mother, yes, but lost opportunities, lost closeness. And yet she had never known hunger like these boys endured. Something in her chest twisted. Victoria poured tea, not the finest brand, but warm, fragrant, grounding. She tried to hide the stirrings of her emotions as the boys shared their lives. Ethan spoke of his dream. I want to build. Bridges, real ones. Not Lego. Bridges people walk on. Victoria raised an eyebrow. Bridges? Yes, bridges connect people. They help people get where they need to go. His voice trembled slightly, but it was steady, measured, honest. Noah's hands traced his sketchbook nervously. And art. I want to paint things people don't see. Things that matter. Victoria's mind raced. Here were two children, nearly invisible to society, speaking with clarity about purpose and empathy. And she had, what? Wealth, accolades, fame, but not connection. Suddenly, the wallet was no longer a transaction. It was a doorway. Later, as the boys prepared to leave, Victoria found herself uncharacteristically hesitant. She handed them each a small envelope. Consider this. Not as a reward, she said, but as a seed. Something to help. Ethan's eyes widened. Noah's lips parted, disbelief hovering. Neither expected kindness without strings. As they walked to the elevator, Victoria watched their small figures disappear, and a memory hit her like a lightning bolt, her mother's old diary. The woman she had admired but often disregarded. A note tucked away in a drawer decades ago spoke of a friend's child, a boy from the Bronx, struggling, bright, and kind. Victoria felt her heart skip. Could it be them? Victoria couldn't sleep that night. Every corner of her penthouse felt empty, too silent. She replayed the scene, the boys' honesty, the fragility beneath their courage, their laughter at simple things. And then, a realization. Her life had been built on schedules, appearances, and wealth accumulation. Yet she had never encountered someone who gave without expectation, not in decades. Her hands unconsciously reached for her mother's old address book. Names, numbers, and one, circled faintly, nearly erased by time, a Maria Taylor, Bronx. Victoria didn't wait. The next morning, she found herself walking through the crowded streets of the Bronx. She wasn't in stilettos now, but sneakers, jeans, trying not to draw attention. The city smelled of street food, exhaust, and life unfiltered. She located the boys' apartment, a building so worn it almost seemed invisible, and knocked. Ethan opened the door, wary, suspicion and curiosity battling in his eyes. "You came back?" Ethan asked, cautious. Victoria swallowed. I wanted to understand. I want to help if you'll let me." Noah peeked around Ethan, clutching his sketchbook. "Why?" Victoria paused. "Because you reminded me of someone I used to know. Someone I lost too soon." Over the next few days, Victoria began visiting the boys. She didn't flaunt wealth. She didn't hand over checks. Instead, she listened, observed, and occasionally taught, sharing small life lessons, artistic tips, and the value of planning while respecting honesty. Ethan's dream of engineering bridges began to take shape with her guidance. Noah's sketches became more confident, more daring. Slowly, the apartment transformed from a survival space to a laboratory of hope. Tiny but potent, yet every scene was balanced by tension, school bureaucracy, the threat of eviction, and the constant reminder of life's harshness outside the apartment walls. One rainy afternoon, as Victoria helped Ethan calculate materials for a makeshift bridge model in the apartment hallway, a letter slipped through the old mailbox. It bore the name Jake Taylor, their father. Ethan froze. Noah's hand tightened on his sketchbook. Victoria felt her pulse quicken. She knew, even before opening it, that this would complicate everything. The cream-colored envelope sat on Victoria's desk, its weight heavier than the $2,000 wallet had ever been. Jake Taylor, their father, had resurfaced. Official papers, signatures, legal jargon sprawled across the page like a gauntlet thrown at their feet. He claimed parental rights, demanded custody, and accused Victoria of manipulating the boys. For Ethan and Noah, the world that had finally begun to feel safe trembled like a fragile bridge in the wind. Their small apartment suddenly felt exposed, every corner vulnerable, every creak in the floorboards louder than before. Victoria read and reread the documents, her stomach twisting. Years of careful planning, her growing bond with the boys, her investment in their dreams, all threatened to unravel in a courtroom. Victoria knew the boys deserved truth, not just protection. She waited until dinner to break the news. "Your father is back," she said carefully, watching their faces pale. Ethan's fork hovered over his plate. "Back? Why now?" Noah's hands trembled slightly. "Does he want us?" Victoria swallowed hard. "He says he does. But what he wants and what he deserves may not be the same." The boys exchanged a glance that spoke louder than words. Abandonment had left scars deeper than visible, and promises could not erase the past. The next days were a whirlwind. Victoria hired a lawyer specializing in child welfare, preparing for a battle that would test not just law, but morality. Jake Taylor's attorney was relentless, wielding biology as a sword. "DNA doesn't lie," they argued in court documents. "Custodial rights cannot be ignored." Victoria countered with evidence of years of abandonment, neglect, and the boys' resilience. She brought letters, sketches, and school records. Ethan's bridge designs and Noah's artwork became more than just symbols of hope. They became proof of a nurturing environment. The courtroom became a chessboard. Every witness, every document, every question became a move in a game where the underdogs were forced to defend not only their home, but their identity and dignity. While legal maneuvers unfolded, Victoria continued to nurture the boys personally. She visited their school, met teachers, and occasionally cooked meals in their modest kitchen. "Why are you doing all this?" Ethan asked one evening, half whisper, half challenge. Victoria looked at him, heart heavy. "Because you reminded me of someone I lost. Someone who taught me kindness mattered more than wealth." Noah's eyes widened. "Are you? Like a mom now?" Victoria shook her head. "No, not a replacement, just someone who refuses to walk away." As the case gained momentum, the media caught wind. Headlines ranged from sensationalist to sympathetic. Billionaire battles estranged father for Bronx boys. Who deserves the children? Public weighs in. Are wealth and love compatible? Social media became a battlefield. Anonymous comments, viral debates, and conflicting opinions threatened to amplify stress. Ethan overheard whispers at school. Noah saw pictures online that made him question his value. Victoria realized this was not just a legal fight. It was a public trial of morality and perception. Retention strategy. Incorporates external tension, increasing stakes while keeping emotional investment high. The first setback. The court session began on a gray morning. Rain streaked the windows, echoing the tension inside. Victoria, the boys, and their lawyer sat at the edge of the courtroom, waiting. Jake Taylor appeared, older than they remembered, his presence a mixture of charm and intimidation. He smiled at them, a smile that felt wrong, unearned. "Good to see you again," he said smoothly. The session opened with testimonies. A social worker reported brief supervision of the boys, highlighting challenges but also resilience. Witnesses spoke of the mother's struggles and her attempts to safeguard the children. Victoria's lawyer presented years of documented abandonment and the boys' achievements since Victoria became involved. And yet, the judge, impartial but stern, reminded the court, biological ties carry significant weight in custody considerations. Ethan clenched his fists. Noah's knees bounced. Outside, cameras flashed. Victoria felt the world narrowing, the walls closing. After court adjourned for lunch, Victoria and the boys walked to a small park nearby. Ethan spread out sketches of bridge designs, trying to focus on something he could control. "I don't want him to take this from us," Ethan said quietly. Victoria knelt beside him. "You don't have to fight alone, but you have to speak your truth. Show the court who you are, not just what your father says you are." Noah, drawing small figures around the bridge sketches, whispered, "We can't let fear decide for us." Court resumed that afternoon. Jake Taylor's attorney presented a letter claiming the father had undergone therapy, maintained employment, and expressed sincere regret. Victoria's heart sank. She understood that the law often valued technical effort over lived experience. The boys, however, took the stand. Ethan spoke of the small apartment they shared, the routines, the sacrifices, and most importantly, the choices they had made, honestly, every day. Noah described the art he created to honor their mother, his voice steady but soft. "I don't want to be taken away from the people who love me," he said, eyes locking briefly on Victoria. The judge listened, impassive but attentive. Jake Taylor's demeanor shifted. Subtle cracks appeared in his carefully constructed facade. Witnesses began to recount details of his abandonment. Victoria's lawyer tied it together. Evidence of neglect, the boy's achievements under her care, and the risk of upheaval if custody shifted. Ethan and Noah's stories, small yet potent, began reshaping the narrative. The boys, once vulnerable, now became active participants in the fight for their own lives. The judge called a recess, signaling tension unresolved. Outside the courthouse, Victoria hugged the boys tightly. "We don't know how this ends," she whispered. Ethan held the sketchbook close. "But we know who we are." Noah's hand rested over Ethan's. "And who's on our side?" The courtroom buzzed with quiet tension. Every whisper, shuffle of papers, and tapping of pens felt amplified. Ethan and Noah sat on the edge of their chairs, sketchbook and art pad resting on their laps, reminders of who they were and what they'd fought for. Victoria sat beside them, her hand lightly pressing against theirs, an anchor in a storm that threatened to wash away years of effort, care, and trust. Across the room, Jake Taylor's calm demeanor belied the storm simmering underneath. He had rehearsed lines, polished his image, and constructed a narrative designed to make the boys' return to his custody seem logical, even inevitable. The attorney painted a picture of reconciliation, growth, and the unbreakable bond of blood. Victoria's lawyer stood first, her voice steady, commanding the room's attention. She didn't just speak of custody laws. She painted a vivid picture of the boys' lives, small moments of resilience, acts of kindness, and evidence that they were thriving under Victoria's guidance. They are not just surviving, she said. They are learning integrity, compassion, and courage. Can the court honestly say that a decade of absence can be erased by intent alone? Ethan's bridge sketches were presented, each carefully annotated. These are not just drawings, Victoria's lawyer explained. They are proof of vision, planning, responsibility. Skills honed in a safe, nurturing environment, Jake's attorney countered, citing therapy sessions, letters of apology, and stable employment. Mr. Taylor has taken steps to make amends. Biology matters. We cannot dismiss the parental bond that naturally exists. The judge allowed Ethan and Noah to speak directly. It was a rare moment, a courtroom bending to human truth. Ethan took a deep breath. I don't want to be taken from the people who taught me how to be responsible, who made me feel safe, who let me dream about bridges, not just survival. Noah clutched his art pad, trembling but resolute. I don't want to go with someone who left us when we needed him most. I want someone who stays, who listens, and who sees me, not just my DNA. The courtroom grew silent. Even Jake faltered slightly, a shadow of doubt flickering across his features. Victoria's eyes glistened with tears, not of pity, but of relief that the boys' voices could finally be heard. As the session progressed, a bombshell emerged. Victoria's lawyer introduced a decade-old letter from Angela, the boy's mother, previously undiscovered by Jake. The envelope, yellowed with age, detailed her hopes, her struggles, and her trust in Victoria to care for the boys if she could not. The court read aloud, "If you ever read this, please know my children are my heart. I hope they grow surrounded by love, by those who teach them courage and kindness. My absence is not abandonment, it is survival. Please watch over them." The weight of Angela's words landed like a sledgehammer. The judge paused, allowing the gravity to sink in. Jake's confident posture wavered, his carefully constructed argument crumbling in the face of undeniable truth. Between courtroom sessions, Victoria met with Jake privately. "I'm not here to fight you," she said, voice calm. "But these boys are not a project for you to redeem yourself. They are lives that deserve continuity, safety, and love." Jake's jaw tightened. "I want them. I miss their lives." Victoria's eyes hardened. "You missed them, and you can't take back what you abandoned. You can be part of their lives, but not at the expense of who they've become." Back in the courtroom, evidence mounted. Teachers testified about the boys' progress and maturity. Social workers described the consistent care and emotional stability Victoria provided. Doctors discussed Noah's stress-related illnesses when the family structure was unstable. Ethan and Noah's sketches and artwork were highlighted once more, not as artistic expression, but as manifestations of growth and resilience nurtured under Victoria's guardianship. Jake attempted one last appeal to biology, claiming rights inherent from birth. But the judge, after careful review, noted the combination of abandonment, lack of relationship, and the children's expressed wishes. Unexpectedly, members of the community, including neighbors, teachers, and local mentors, offered testimony. One teacher spoke, "These boys show responsibility and empathy beyond their years. They know their value comes from action, not bloodlines. Taking them away would undo a decade of growth." A local engineer who had mentored Ethan said, "His bridge designs aren't just for projects. They reflect problem-solving, perseverance, and vision. These are qualities Victoria helped nurture." In a final twist, Jake's veneer cracked. Alone with his attorney, he admitted quietly, "I didn't know. I thought love was enough, but I missed them." The audience sees a moment of human complexity. He is not evil, just absent, flawed, and forced to confront consequences. This deepens the narrative, moving beyond simple villainy. The judge delivered the verdict. Victoria would retain legal guardianship, with Jake granted supervised visitation contingent on therapy and continued effort to rebuild trust. The courtroom exhaled. Ethan hugged Victoria. Noah wept quietly, clutching his art pad. Outside, media cameras flashed, but the boys ignored the spectacle. Their world, small but filled with care and integrity, had survived. Victoria knelt to their level, whispering, "You did it. You spoke your truth. You stayed brave." Returning to their Bronx apartment, life resumed in a quieter rhythm. Ethan and Noah sketched and painted, but now with a newfound confidence. Victoria supported them without overbearing control. The legal threat had passed, but the lesson endured. Resilience, honesty, and moral courage matter more than wealth or bloodline. Jake, slowly re-entering their lives, learned to earn trust rather than demand compliance. A cautious relationship began, one defined by boundaries and respect. The final scene shows Ethan standing on the edge of a construction site, hard hat in hand, gazing at the beams of the Angela Bridge under construction. Noah sketches nearby, capturing the moment in vibrant colors. Victoria watches from a distance, proud but quiet. Ethan turns, holding up his sketch. "Mom, we did it. We didn't just survive. We built something real." The camera pans to the bridge stretching across the river, sunlight glinting off steel beams, a symbol of resilience, choice, and the power of doing what's right. Years had passed since the custody battle that had seemed insurmountable. The Bronx apartment, once cramped and filled with uncertainty, had become a haven of growth, creativity, and quiet resilience. Ethan, now in his early 20s, stood at the edge of a construction site, hard hat in hand, surveying the beams of the Angela Bridge. His bridge. Steel intertwined like fingers reaching across the divide, connecting neighborhoods, lives, and stories. Noah sat nearby, sketchbook open, capturing the scene in vivid colors. Each stroke of his pencil seemed to capture not just the bridge, but the journey that had brought them here. Every day of struggle, every moment of choice, every act of kindness that had shaped them. Victoria watched from a distance, a proud guardian who had guided without smothering, who had nurtured without controlling. The Angela Bridge was more than steel and concrete. It became a symbol of hope for the Bronx community. School children sketched it in art class. Teachers used it as a lesson in resilience and planning. The local media covered its construction. But the story that captivated hearts wasn't the engineering feat. It was the journey of two brothers who returned a lost wallet, and how that simple act cascaded into something extraordinary. A young boy named Marcus wrote to Ethan, "I didn't know people like me could build bridges, but now I do." Ethan read the letter quietly, a soft smile tugging at his lips. Every decision he had made, every choice to stay honest, to act with courage, had created a ripple that extended far beyond his own life. Ethan's career flourished, not just because of talent, but because of the character forged through adversity. He became a bridge engineer whose designs incorporated community input, sustainability, and artistry. Every blueprint carried traces of the lessons he'd learned: patience, vision, and care for those who could not speak for themselves. Noah's artistic journey had blossomed as well. His solo exhibitions drew crowds from across the city, capturing stories of resilience, unnoticed sacrifices, and quiet strength. The centerpiece of his first gallery, Unseen Mothers, was a portrait of their mother, Angela, watching over two children with love and protection. Critics hailed it as a raw, moving tribute to unsung heroes. Thomas Adler's role had evolved far beyond the initial encounter with the lost wallet. No longer a distant tycoon insulated by wealth, he became a mentor, a surrogate father, and a living example of what it means to invest in people rather than projects. He attended every milestone: school graduations, gallery openings, bridge launches, and quiet dinners where conversations ranged from philosophy to art to engineering. He had learned how to show up, how to listen, and how to offer guidance without imposing his will. Even Jake, the boy's estranged father, was not left untransformed. His attempts to reconnect were cautious, guided by therapy and the structure set by Victoria and Thomas. Over time, he began to understand that love is demonstrated through presence and care, not just biological connection. He attended bridge unveilings and gallery shows, witnessing firsthand how the boys had flourished despite his absence. While he would never replace their early years, he gradually became part of their world in a way defined by accountability, patience, and respect. The Angela Bridge stood as a literal and figurative symbol: connection, perseverance, and the power of small acts creating monumental change. During the inauguration, Ethan took the microphone. His voice steady, he addressed the crowd. My mother believed in things she couldn't always touch: second chances, integrity, and the courage to do what's right. This bridge isn't just for cars or commuters, it's for anyone who's ever felt divided from the life they deserve. I built this because she once built something stronger in us. The crowd held their breath, moved by the simplicity and depth of the message. Cameras flashed, but the real applause came from hearts moved by a story of moral courage, perseverance, and love. Life did not become perfect. There were challenges, setbacks, and ordinary struggles. Ethan lost bids on projects, Noah battled creative blocks, and Thomas navigated the slow unraveling of a company he once led. Yet these moments were framed differently now. They had learned that small acts, like returning a wallet, sharing a sandwich, or showing up consistently, could change trajectories. Their lives were rich not in wealth or fame, but in meaning, purpose, and connection. On the 10th anniversary of Angela's death, the family returned to her grave. Ethan brought a miniature model of the Angela Bridge, Noah a print of his painting. Thomas, silent, placed a hand over theirs, symbolizing unity without words. Noah asked softly, "Do you think she sees us?" Ethan smiled. "She sees us, and she's proud." The wind rustled through the trees. In that quiet moment, they felt the culmination of decades of struggle, resilience, and choice. Legacy wasn't in steel or paint. It was in love, integrity, and the courage to act rightly when no one was watching. The final narration ties together the moral arc. One small act, returning a lost wallet, sparked a chain of events that changed lives, healed hearts, and built bridges, both literal and metaphorical. You don't need wealth or fame to make a difference. Courage, kindness, and integrity can ripple farther than you'll ever know. So the next time you face a choice, ask yourself, will I do the right thing, even when it's hard? Because that choice could rewrite everything. The camera pans one last time over the bridge, the city skyline, and the brothers walking hand in hand, their lives forever shaped by honesty, courage, and love.